Hello, everyone. I think it's 5 o'clock on my time, but all of you are probably in different time zones, so I'm not exactly sure where everybody is at. But since we're at time, so I'm just gonna give a very brief introduction and get us started. So welcome everyone and Chantal for joining us and with this space with mentorship sessions. And my name is Yue. I am one of the co-chair on the mentorship committee of Division 45. So I will be here learning about time management and also monitoring and providing assistance to the session. So just as a quick reminder, we would like to record this event for educational purposes, so we can post the video on our website later. There are a lot of students who might want to access to those material afterwards, so we would like to provide this opportunity to them. So if you don't feel comfortable being recorded or ask questions, feel free to type your questions in the chat box and I will bring it up to our mentor. But at the same time, I would encourage all of us kind of engaging in share and discussing, since this is our follow-up and chit-chat session, to build a stronger connection between us and the mentor. So I'll give the floor to Chantal to introduce yourself maybe and maybe kind of get us started.
Okay, there we go. So my name is Chantal and I'm a fourth year doctoral student here at the University of Texas at Austin. I study developmental psychology, specifically bilingual child development. And I'm really excited to talk about time management today. I think this is a really cool opportunity. This virtual mentorship is a really great idea to reach, students in different locations. And I've been a mentor in several different programs since sophomore year, actually, of college. So it's been a long time, and I really enjoy it. So it's fun to be with some peers of mine, other graduate students, so we can share some ideas and tips. So I just want to say thank you all for joining. And I just kind of want to give a very brief run through of a few tips that I have, and then maybe we can, share some questions or some tips and whatnot. So first off, before I go into explaining some of these things, I just wanted to emphasize, like I did last time, that there are different methods for time management. There's no one single right way of doing it, which is why it's important to, ask around and see what different methods people use and just find what fits best for you. Also, time management isn't just about managing your time, but also what I call self-management, managing yourself, and trying to just be aware of what you can do, also taking care of yourself, making sure that you are well both physically and mentally so that you can be productive throughout, this planned process that you have. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what I call backwards planning. And basically, I know a lot of us think about time management in terms of shorter time spans, so maybe a week or possibly a month. But I always recommend planning very far out in advance. So I start with the major goals or the major steps in my across my graduate career. So across those 5-6 years, however long you plan on taking in your program, and then marking, which major milestone is in which year, in which semester. So everything from proposing your dissertation to defending it and everything in between and before, right? So writing this down really helps. I like to use like Google Sheets or Excel to write out all of these major milestones. And then once you have those milestones written out by year, then you can work backwards and create a monthly plan. So what do I need to break these major goals down into these, these sub-goals or sub-tasks that I can then distribute across months, okay? One thing is that it's important to be very specific in all of these, not just the monthly goals, but very specific so that you can be aware of each component and each step that is required. That way you don't kind of miss something and end up having to crunch everything into one time period. So once you've got your month's sort of sub goals planned out, then break that down into your weekly goals, and then finally break down those weekly goals into daily goals. So that's the whole, backwards planning. And again, like I said, I prefer to have, like an Excel sheet or a Google sheet to help visualize what my year-by-year goals are and my month-by-month goals, so those longer-term goals. And then weekly goals and daily goals, I like to keep in another sort of central, more localized calendar, like Google Calendar, or if you prefer a written planner, that's fine too. So that's, I think, my biggest piece of advice, right, is planning long-term. That's the key point. It's also very important to, while you're staying productive, like I mentioned earlier, to take care of yourself. That way you can make sure to make sure that you're able to be on top of things and feel good about it, right, and not fall behind. So one thing that I always suggest is when planning your daily activities or weekly activities, keep in mind that you need to plan out those breaks. Those breaks are just as important as planning out your actual tasks, right? So there's a lot of different methods that you can use for planning these out. Some people will just write them into their calendar. I like to use the Pomodoro method. So I'll work for about 30 minutes on one task, then take a 5-minute break, work 30 minutes again on that task, another 5-minute break, and so on. And once I've done about 4 sessions of those 30 minutes, then I'll take a longer, like 15 or 20-minute break. And it's nice to change the scenery, right? I usually lock myself up in my office forever working. But once I take that big break, I like to, walk around the building, go outside, kind of get a breath of fresh air. So that's important to kind of reboot your system so that then when you come back, you can come back to focusing. It seems very strict to do it that way. So just know that you can take a longer break if you need it, and you should definitely cut yourself some slack. If things don't stick to schedule, that's totally fine. You can always readjust, and more than likely you will have to readjust. And there will be some days that you just don't have the energy to be working. And if you have to take a whole day to just relax and stay home and watch Netflix, that's totally fine. Just take that day to yourself, re-energize, and then come back and give it your all. Another important thing, especially for your mental health, is to keep track of your accomplishments. So a lot of times we have that huge to-do list, and that's very daunting. We just see all the things that we have to do, and we often forget to keep track of what we've already done. It's nice to kind of get that reward. You see what you've accomplished that day, and at the end of the day, you feel good about what you've done. And then, on top of that, that'll help you sort of readjust your schedule as needed. Maybe you're planning way too much in one day and you're kind of overestimating how much you can do in one day. And then you can tone it down if you need to and feel proud of your accomplishments once you're able to cross off all that to do. And keep in mind that timelines are meant to be broken. So if your timeline doesn't go as planned, it's perfectly fine. Again, readjusting whether they're long-term goals or short-term goals. I and many of my peers, have realized that we might have to take a little bit longer, maybe an extra year. And that's totally fine. Just adjust your timeline as needed. What's most important is to just keep track of how your monthly and yearly and weekly goals are all going to shift depending on that change. And then finally, just a few extra tips. I suggest finding a central calendar and to-do list. I know when I first started, I had my Google Calendar, but then I also wrote everything down onto a written planner, and then I'd have a little side, little digital post-its on my computer, and it just kind of got overwhelming. So it's good to try to centralize everything as much as you can. And then in terms of, that's, more in terms of timing, but I also recommend keeping a separate planner or sort of time tracker, I guess you could say, for your study. So those of you who are doing experiments or, whatever sort of research that you're doing, it's nice to keep track of each phase of each study, right? Because after a while, it can kind of get overwhelming and like things are just starting to kind of merge together and blur out. So what I like to do is I keep a whiteboard. You can probably see part of it right here. But I keep a whiteboard that specifies which studies are still kind of in the progress of being made, those that are in data collection mode, then analyses, prepping the manuscript, revise and resubmit, publishing, conference projects that are in preparation, things like that. So that kind of helps you visualize where each project is at, because I know that can sometimes get confusing. Make sure to overestimate how long you think it'll take you to do things. Oftentimes we think that we can do 10 things in 1 hour, and that's just not realistic. So that kind of goes back to reflecting on what you've done so that you can readjust accordingly. But yeah, try to overestimate the amount of time. So think, if you think that this task is going to take me an hour, set aside an hour and a half for it, just so that you have that cushion at least. Also try to stay flexible. So oftentimes an unexpected meeting will come up, a student will come in and need to talk to you, all of those things. And if you have too strict of a timeline or too strict of a schedule, sometimes that can throw things off and be kind of discouraging. So make sure to be flexible and plan for those unexpected sort of interruptions. Another tip that I have is to share your goals, your long-term goals, especially with your advisor. I think sometimes we forget to do that, and that's a really, really important aspect, because we want, our advisor to be on the same page that we are, particularly because we rely a lot on them for, feedback, things like that. Let me see. Also, when you're coming up with your to-do list, try to be as specific as possible. So for example, on your to-do list, you shouldn't have write IRB, because that is pretty broad and it's probably going to take a lot longer than, say, a day. So I recommend being more specific and breaking those down into subcomponents. So maybe write the methods section or the recruitment section of your IRB, just so that it's easier for you to cross that off at the end of the day. Also, kind of like what we're doing here, ask your peers for tips. Like I said, there's no one way to do things, and you might find that one of your peers is doing something that'll work really well for you. So make sure to ask around. And then finally, after all of these tips, it seems very burdensome, but in the end, it's very, very important to plan, because it's going to save you a lot of stress, a lot of time, and as tedious as it may seem to have to be managing these timelines, it really will help you out in the long run. It's hard to stick by them. I know even me, sometimes I'm the person that's always advocating for time management, but I myself sometimes will get behind in adjusting my timeline or planning things out. So, it'll be difficult, but it's definitely worth it. So make sure to dedicate, even if it's just 15, 20 minutes a day, kind of looking back over your timeline and making sure everything's on track. So those are pretty much all the tips that I have. And if anyone has any questions, comments, want to share any tips, that would be awesome.
Hey, Chantal.
Hi.
Hi. I have a question. So as you were talking, I opened up an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm having a hard time trying to see what this would look like. Do you have your goals broken down by personal and academic?
Mm-hmm. So awesome. Let me pull mine up. There's a lot of different formats that you can do it in. Let's see if I can find mine. The way I usually have it is in the first column. I have listed out all of my major goals. Sometimes I'll do it by project. Sometimes I'll do it by the actual, long-term goals. So for example, right now I'm in the process of writing my qualifying paper. So in the first row, I have qualifying paper, dissertation proposal, dissertation experiments, data collection, analysis, write-up, defense, graduation. And then in the next columns, I have each year, so 2017, fall and spring, 2018, summer, fall, spring, 2019, summer, fall, spring. And I just color code it with, different colors. So yellow is my goal. I have an orange box to where, yellow's my goal, but this orange box is sort of a flexible, if I can't make it in that yellow box, then I'll aim at least for this orange box. And then my gray boxes are kind of where I plan on working on those things, right? So for example, I had my qualifying paper I had set to finish by the fall of 2017. And then the data collection for my dissertation, I have gray boxes from fall 2017 all the way to summer 2018. And then orange boxes around fall 2018 to spring 2019 for actually completing data collection, and then so on. So just depending on those major goals that you have, you can, break that down. And, there's different formats for different people. You could rearrange it a different way, but that's how I have mine.
Okay. And I was gonna say, sorry, I don't know, Chantal, if you feel comfortable, you can actually share screen with us, so we can kind of take a look at the format. But if that's personal work information, you don't have to. I just want to offer.
No, I'm happy to. Hopefully, I have a lot of things open. Here we go. Let's try that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So here I have my different projects, and then this yellow part is, my goal. I was planning this before 2017, so that's why these other years aren't there. But yeah, so this yellow part is my goal, and then these gray boxes represent the time that I plan on working on these other goals. And then this orange part, data collection, especially with children, is very unpredictable. So that's why I set these, orange boxes for that area. And then finally, writing up defense and graduation in this semester. Now,
Thank you so much for sharing.
Pardon?
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, of course. I think I also have, let me see. So here's another thing that I have. For example, I have, this is breaking down actual experiments. So for example, I have, I guess these are more papers, dissertation and proposal, or I'm sorry, yeah, proposal and paper, but the actual experiments, I have them in different boxes. So this, we're still in the process of sort of coming up with the ideas and the stimuli, and then the analysis for this study is taking place. The manuscript is in the early stages for this study, and then I just move them down, as I go.
Thank you, Chantal. It's funny because this, if I showed my sister this, she would be like, oh, no way. But for me, I really love like graphs and figures. So I really got drawn in when you said you use Excel spreadsheets, because how I do it right now is in my phone, because I like to be, like if I'm idle somewhere and I'm waiting online or something, I go into my phone and then I have like a recurring event every day, and it's all day, and it pulls up in the calendars all day, and I have like different emojis on it broken up by time, but it's just a list. And yeah, and it kind of helps to remind me what I need to do. But I kind of like this a lot better, because then you have columns and it's clearer, and then you can color coordinate it.
Yeah.
But I like this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, having it on your mobile phone, that's nice because you can carry it around with you. But, and everybody has different methods. For me, the color coding really helps me out, but emojis sound really fun too.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you both for sharing. And I have a little bit, I use the software to track my time. So I figured I might share with you as well. I started probably last year, so it has been working pretty well for me. So I just wanted to show you.
I heard Asana is good.
Oh, really? Yeah, there might be different software. So this is the one that I use. I don't use Excel sheet, but I try to log my time on the app on my phone, so you can either look at it on your phone or you can look at it on your computer. So I kind of break it down to different categories. So at the end of the week, they will give me a small summary of how long I have spent time on each project. So that helps me to kind of understand how long I actually need. Sometimes I plan for 2 hours, but I end up spending 4 hours on it. So next time I know I need to plan a little bit more time on
That's a really good idea, because I know it can especially get really easy to get caught up in like smaller tasks that you shouldn't be spending so much of your time in. And so that's a nice way of keeping track of actually, am I dedicating enough time that I need to for these bigger projects? Very cool. And that's toggle.com. Awesome.
Yeah. And kind of related to that, I have a question in terms of when we are planning. I think one thing that I realize is it's important for me to be able to accurately estimate how much time that I need for each task. And it's easier if I'm doing something that I have been doing for a while. I know exactly how much time I might need. But if I'm starting maybe a new literature review or a new type of project, it gives me anxiety that I don't know how long I'm gonna need. Maybe I'll need 2 hours, maybe I'll need a full day. So it's really difficult to start a new type of project. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or suggestions on kind of a new project. How do you start to plan your time?
Yeah, so I think that goes back again to strategizing. And, once you've done a little bit of it at the very beginning, it's going to be hard to set up for sure, this is going to take me 2 hours per day. Once you get an idea of how productive you are in whatever steps are involved in that task per day and how long it takes, then you can sort of get a better sense of how long it'll take you. But another thing is that, like, for example, a literature review. You mentioned a literature review. You can kind of estimate, well, about how many articles more or less do I have in mind that I want to read? Let's say I want to start with 20 articles. So then read an article and time how long it takes you to go through that article, take your notes and do whatever you need to do. And then think, okay, that times 20, let's say it took me an hour to go through that article, times 20 hours. How am I going to spread that out across my week so that I can meet my weekly and monthly goal? So kind of breaking it down by steps and then being observant to, how long it's taking you to take, or how long it's taking you for each step, and then planning appropriately. I know sometimes I'm very tempted to just make all of my to-do lists. I'm going to write down these 20 things that I'm going to do. But then you got to go back and think, okay, this is probably going to take me about an hour, this one about 2 hours, this one about 1. And then, plan accordingly, like, oh yeah, I'm probably only going to be awake this number of hours. So I should only plan for those, that amount of time. But yeah, kind of estimating from your experience. And that kind of motivates you to be productive in that hour, right? Because then if you see, okay, it took me about an hour to do this, so that means I'm going to aim to finish it next time. If I'm going to do, say, another article reading, I'm going to aim to finish it in an hour too.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has any tips or anything they want to share.
I'm working on right now trying to, because I had all my time planned this morning and I had about 14 tasks to do before 12 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I did really good, but except for I did 10 of them. Okay. And the 2 that I didn't do were both the only ones that were academic. One was finishing a paper, and then the other one was doing something that my supervisor wanted me to research. And I noticed what held me back is I like to do the most is play with my dog. I was like doing his hair, and I was like, shampooing him and giving him a little trim and stuff. And so that was just so enjoyable. So I have to learn now how to find a balance of not overdoing the thing that I've scheduled to kind of balance out the things that are in the schedule, but then not like depriving myself of things that are enjoyable too.
Yeah, so it's nice to schedule a time. Let's say that, I know there's some students that have families or, maybe even children, and it's good to kind of have a time to call, okay, this is either the end of my workday or from this time to this time is break time, and I'm just going to do me. I'm going to go, meditate or interact with my dog, go play with my dog, whatever it may be. It's nice to designate that amount of time too. So, maybe your workday officially ends at, let's say, 7 p.m. and from that on, you're dedicating the rest of your night to your family. Or that's unrealistic with your schedule, maybe you can say, okay, from 4 to 6, I'm going to take a break. And, it's a long break, but during that time, I'm going to do something enjoyable. I'm going to work out, things like that. Because going back to taking care of yourself, both mentally and physically, those breaks are just as important as doing those tasks. And in terms of sort of putting off some tasks too, it's important to sort of self-reflect and think, why is it that I might be avoiding this task? Is it because I didn't have time for it? Or is it because it seems very daunting and I'm kind of procrastinating because I don't want to do it? That happens to me a lot. And so it's good to, those tasks that seem a little daunting, it's good to break them down into subtasks. So you mentioned finishing a paper, maybe breaking that down into writing 2 paragraphs, right? So I'm going to take 40 minutes to write 2 paragraphs. And that's your goal. And so it doesn't seem as such a big hill to sort of have to climb.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or any comments about the things that we shared so far? Oh, Rebecca says no questions. Okay. And we have Camille on the call and another user. Oh, another user just popped out.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing that's helpful is to join different communities, especially like Facebook groups. That helps me. I'm on some different like PhD student Facebook groups, and sometimes if we want some tips and we can't get some from our peers nearby or at the same school, you can post some on on this community forum or whatever and get some feedback too.
Right.
I know last time we had a student with a family and she asked about time management when you have kids, and sometimes there aren't as there might not be someone in your particular program or school that have the same experience. So joining a group that can relate to your situation can give you better advice on that and kind of have like a little support group.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know our attendees are typing in some chat box. And since this is our second session, it's really intend to kind of follow up with questions or reflections to build more of a connection between us and the mentor. So feel free to jump in if you don't have any questions, any comments and reflections are welcome as well. And I think it's nice that we have a smaller group, so it's easier to hear everybody else's voice and kind of talk together. And I guess one thing that I really identify with was when Chantal, you said kind of being reflective of why sometimes it's hard to get to some tasks. So I think personally over time I realized kind of just paying attention to my the emotions that I'm experiencing is really helpful and give me some information about why this is difficult for me. And sometimes it's anxiety, maybe it's a new task or difficult task, and sometimes it's boredom. I guess personally for me, if I'm doing something that I know is going to be tedious and for a long time, it's an easy task, but it takes me a long time to get to it because boredom is something that actually gets to me, and I didn't really realize that. So I find it helpful to try to identify what I'm feeling in that moment and try to regulate that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's still difficult. But yeah, that's kind of what came to my mind.
Yeah, I know sometimes I deal with that too, that I kind of get tired of working on a task and little by little I see like my attention is starting to shift. I'm starting to check my phone more or go talk to my friend more because I'm tired of working on something. But that sort of timing routine helps to helps to kind of keep you energized throughout that longer process. So 25 to 30 minutes working, and then take a 5-minute break, step away from it, sort of reboot yourself. I actually have a little sand timer that I keep on in my office.
Wow.
30 minutes, and then I'll take a break, and then another 30 minutes and take a break.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it gives me a nice little visual.
Yeah, yeah, I actually might get one of those. I think it looks cute on your desk, and it's also really handy.
Yeah, I know my mom got it for me. I was like, Mom, for Christmas, I want a sand timer. She was kind of confused when I was asking for a sand timer, but I like it, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Did Rebecca or Camille have any tips about their own time management? I know last session we all shared a lot of our tips. That's okay.
I don't really have any like major tips or anything like that. I think my time management needs a lot of work. But one thing that I've just started to do this semester, I'm a first year counseling psych student, and like this semester sort of like hit me out of left field. I don't know what what happened, but so what I decided to do was, based on when I have assignment to do weekly, like for classes, if I know reading is like super heavy for one class, when what I very generic schedule, and so I gave myself days to work on certain classwork. So if I know that like this semester my Tuesday readings are usually much heavier than Thursday, so on my generic schedule, if possible, I have myself starting that on Thursday nights, and then I break it up Thursday to Saturday. So I give myself those number of days to work on those readings, so that way Monday night I'm not like freaking out or I don't feel way behind. So I kind of just did that with everything that I do weekly, and just sort of guesstimated how many days I feel comfortable giving myself to work on things, so it doesn't feel like overwhelming every day.
Yeah. No, that's a really good tip, is just being conscious again about how much something will take you, and just being observant in that, knowing that Tuesday's readings are going to be a lot heavier, and planning accordingly really takes off a lot of stress, instead of kind of saving it all for 1 or 2 days before, like you do, say maybe your Friday class, because your Friday class has a lighter load. Yeah, that's a really good tip, definitely. I have a friend who dedicates all of Sunday to reading. So Sunday's like her reading day.
So this is for those who have long, unruly hair. So I noticed, I took a little poll about how long it takes me to do hair in the mornings and stuff. And I found that I spend a considerable time, almost 2 hours every single day doing my hair. So for me, what I started doing now is protective style. So like, braids or twists or something where I'm not waking up in the morning and fussing. And I have saved so much time, and also it helps to like de-stress me, because it's like one less decision to make. Like, okay, so what should I do? Should I wear it up? Should I wear it down? Should I do this? Does it want to be straight? Does it want to be curly? And I find that helps me so much, because I used to save so much more time, and now I can do other things that I want to do, like, I don't know, just whatever I want to do. I have more time. So for people who have like hair like mine, I think that it's important to kind of put the hair away in whatever way you can, like braids or protective styles, like weaves or whatever, just something to kind of save time. So I found that really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So I think being observant of any smaller thing that you might not think about in relation to time management, can have a really big impact. So even me, when you said that, I was like, yeah, me too. I cut my hair. My hair used to be like halfway down my back, and it was crazy, because I would straighten it or I would braid it, and it was a lot of work. So I was just like, let's just chop it off and make it a lot easier to deal with. But also things like packing your lunch the day in advance, things like that. Just any little thing that you notice you can cut back, even if it's a little bit amount of time, is really helpful. So.
I actually don't do my hair at all during the semester, Erica. So I protective style the entire semester. So it kind of sucks because Radford, where I go, is in a very rural area, and I frankly do not trust people around here to touch my hair. So what I do is in August, when I go home for a break, I go get my hair done. I go get my hair braided, and then we have like a quote unquote fall break, but it really is just a Friday. It's not a fall break. So I go home or I go get my hair done then, and I get it. I just keep getting it braided so I literally don't have to touch it. And I'm also not a morning person. So even if I had to do my hair, my body refuses to let me like wake up earlier than a certain time period. So it's just, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. But so, like knowing I'm not a morning person, it just kind of forces me into that schedule. So it gets kind of boring because I don't really, like I said, I don't do my hair, but it can be very, very time consuming in addition to schoolwork and teaching and research and practicum and everything else. So I just eliminated it altogether.
Thanks for sharing that, because I'm in Santa Barbara and there is almost no one. There's like one person in the whole area that can do my hair, and then when he's sick or whatever, and that's what actually jump started this, because he was sick on Monday and I was like, what am I supposed to do with my hair? And the closest place I can go to is like Ventura County or Los Angeles, so those are the places I can go and get my hair done. So I went and go ahead and have a protective style, and it'll be in there for 2 or 3 months or 2 months until it's time to get it done again. So I'm glad somebody else understands what that's like. Thank you.
Oh, I just want to say thank you for all of your sharing. And I know Rebecca typed in the chat box saying she wanted to cut her hair as well. And I kind of cut my hair as well, probably a year or two ago, and I realized how much time it saves me. Not only, I don't think my hair is as time consuming as some of yours, but it still takes a lot of time for me to dry them and having to worry about them. So. Yeah, and also makeup. I feel like during the semesters, I eliminate those time in the morning to have to do makeup and just trying to make less decisions and save more time to do the things that I need to get to. Yeah, Erica said there's maybe a funny study we can do with beauty rituals in graduate students.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So something else that came to my mind in terms of time management and thinking about, I think I spend a lot of time to think about how should I manage my time better during the past year, because at some point I found it very difficult to keep everything together. And one thing that I thought actually helps me a lot is to make sure I sleep 7 to 8 hours every night. I have been a night owl since forever, so I never really kind of honor the time that I need to go to sleep. But I realize that's something that really drains me. If I'm short of sleep for the whole week, it's really difficult for me to keep being motivated. So I actually started to there is a reminder on my phone. I use an iPhone, so they have a bedtime app, I think. So they'll remind you, oh, if you want to get up this hour and have 8 hours of sleep, you should go to bed now. They will give me a reminder an hour before when I'm supposed to go to bed. So I try my best to stick with that, even though sometimes I don't finish the things that I have on my list. I realized prioritizing sleep was important for me and just helped my mental health and physical health and keep me going for longer.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, especially if you you know, everybody has different schedules and everybody has, you know, some people are morning people, some people are more, you know, productive at night. But I know, like, for me, I used to stay up really late and I would come to school pretty late too. I'd come to school maybe like 9 or 10. That was early for me. And I realized that as the day would go by, you know, more distractions would come about, whether it was like, you know, class or like a meeting with a student, you know, things that were not really planned. And I adjusted my sleeping schedule so that I could come in extra early. So now I'll come in closer to like 7 or 8. And that gives me that extra time to, you know, without distractions, it's usually pretty empty around this time. So I'm able to be more productive. And, you know, it took some getting used to because my entire life I have not been a morning person. But I'm also teaching a class at 9. So it's kind of necessary. And also, kind of going back to the sleep, I think it's also really important to sort of have that alarm, not just for when to go to sleep, but also when to start your sort of sleep routine, because it's really easy for us, you know, once we go to sleep, it's easy for us to keep thinking about all the things that we have to do. And oh my gosh, tomorrow I have to do this, tomorrow I have to do that. I didn't get to do this, I didn't get to do that. And just, you know, that sometimes will put us behind in our sleep. So I recommend choosing a time to start winding down and maybe even choose some sort of, you know, ritual. Like maybe you'll do a quick little session of bedtime yoga, or maybe you drink your bedtime cup of tea or chamomile tea or something, just to kind of train your brain that, you know, when I start doing this now, you know, it's time to sleep. And if you feel like you keep going through a list in your head and you've got your mind running and whatnot, I recommend finding a piece of paper and just writing it all out. Just getting it out of your mind and onto paper. That way you can, you know, sleep peacefully and get better sleep.
Thank you. So it seems like Rebecca had to head out, and she said thank you for the sessions.
Yeah, definitely. There's some good sleep tips.
And I was wondering, since we're kind of on the topic of time management and also self-care, I wonder kind of what is everybody's strategy to self-care and kind of recharge yourself in addition to the busy schedule or time that you have planned for everything.
So like I start definitely, like I always emphasize, is taking lots of breaks, because I feel like if I just work straight, I'll start to burn out. So lots of breaks, lots of walking breaks. I think last session Erica mentioned getting like a change of scenery too, to kind of, you know, shift your mood, maybe to be more productive in a certain task. But yeah, lots of breaks just to get that relaxation. Definitely making sure that I have time to spend with my family, because, you know, I feel better inside knowing that I actually dedicated some time to them. Trying to have something that's good for my health, like exercising. I try to swim or go running at least every other day or 3 times a week. Sometimes that's not always possible, but, you know, just having that goal too. And then, of course, like we talked about, sleep. Before I go to sleep, I usually have a cup of that. I don't know if y'all have ever had that Sleepy Time tea by Celestial Seasonings. So good, and it really knocks you out. I don't know if Erica or Camille have their sort of routines. Ah, yeah, reward system. That's good. Yeah, so Erica said, I work for rewards, work then reward myself with yoga, walks, gym, aromatherapy, and a yummy snack. That sounds good, especially the yummy snack part. Okay, so Camille said she has no classes on Friday, sets aside a few hours, maybe 2 for TV, Criminal Minds, TGIT, and stuff like that. Very cool. Yeah, definitely. Netflix will really suck you in. Yeah, I think a reward system is definitely really good.
Yeah, and I really echo what you all have shared, and I realize that social time is also really important. Kind of spending time either sometimes we have girls' night or having parties with my cohorts. In the past, I have the mindset that, oh, if I take this time out, I feel guilty or I'm not doing work. But over time, I realize if I don't have those human contact, I feel burnout quicker and just not motivated. So,
yeah, I know for me, definitely, that's one thing is oftentimes I'll go, if I go on a family trip or something, we go visit family on the weekends a lot. And I'll feel guilty, like, oh, I should be writing, I should be reading, I should be working on this project. But really, you need that time to just not think about work.
Right.
Movie night and outings with friends, Lifetime movies. I love Lifetime movies on weekends if I work for it. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's awesome. And I also really like what you shared earlier about taking breaks. I don't think that's something that I do very well. I tend to just sit here for 3 hours straight and kind of in the zone. But I think what you said is important to take breaks and make sure that you can go longer.
Yeah, no, it's very tempting to not take a break, to just, tell yourself, no, I'm just going to push through and I'm going to get all of this done, even if it takes me 4 hours. But try it. Try a day without any breaks, and then try a day with breaks, and compare how productive you were. Compare, how you felt that day. Write down how you felt that day. And if taking no breaks at all works for you, then, maybe that is the strategy. But I always cheer out for, taking lots of breaks.
Yeah, I like that.
And short breaks. I mean, just a 5-minute break just to stand up and stretch. Go talk to your friend for a few minutes, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Since we have a pretty small group setting, feel free, Erica and Camille, feel free to unmute yourself and just jump in the discussion. We have probably about a few minutes left, and feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in with any questions.
I'm busy working on my Excel spreadsheet. I'm serious. Like, I've color coordinated it.
I love it.
It looks pretty okay so far. I'm enjoying the colors, the many colors.
Awesome. Well, if you want to share it with us, we'd love to see the progress. Get some ideas.
You want to see my progress? Sure.
Yeah.
Let me see. Hold on.
I love it.
I gotta see how to share screen.
I think it's right on the bottom middle.
Yeah. All right, do y'all see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. By month. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing quietly.
Great. Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Glad to see that we're putting some of those strategies into use immediately.
Yeah, because I think it's important to get it off your mind, like anything that you have in your head. Well, at least for me, like if you ruminate and it causes such anxiety. And I think that's why I had that list going to my phone because there was so much to do. I had to put it somewhere and I had to access it when I needed it. But it's good to just be able to just get it out of your mind, put it away and deal with it, whenever you can deal with it. So.
Yeah. And definitely as you're making that, keep in mind things like, hey, this month I have to go to a wedding, or this month is spring break, or this month is family trip. Keep that in mind so that, you can plan accordingly. Don't set your biggest project to be due that month or that week. Try to, plan accordingly.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, maybe one last question that I have, just thinking about time management and self-care. I was wondering, have you had the experience of when you are reaching to your maximum limit or being pretty close to burnout, and how did you recognize those signs and know that, okay, this is, I can't push myself any further, this is it? And if you have those experiences, kind of what helped you to recuperate yourself after that? Because I personally, I think I've reached that point, and that really was an interesting experience. So I was curious what other people have experienced.
Yeah, so for me, I recognize that I'm getting to that point when I'm just exhausted. And as much as I want to put high quality, say like writing and putting together a presentation, it's just, it's just not even making sense at that point. But also if I'm just like, I feel like I can't focus. Like I'm just so tempted to just be distracted and just on my phone or whatever. I feel like that kind of tells me like, hey, I need to take a bigger break or something, because obviously I'm not able to focus right now. And usually how I deal with that is I try to just change the scenery. So my husband and I and our dogs, we like to go hiking a lot. So that just kind of helps me like get that breath of fresh air, get a little bit of exercise in. And sometimes that means I'll take a whole weekend hiking with my family, or, going on a camping trip or something that's just going to get you away from your work for a little while. And, take the time that you need. If you need a few days or if you just need a few hours, what's important is that once you get back into it, you can actually be productive.
One thing that I notice when I'm like feeling really overwhelmed or, nearing burnout is my body starts to let me know. I just physically feel like out of it, but I also become a little bit like irritable or frustrated with things very easily, a lot more easier than usual. So like me and my roommate have a pretty good relationship, being in the house together and things like that. But I'll find myself like little small things will start to annoy me that never annoyed me before. And when those things start to happen, I kind of have to, reflect and check on myself and say, okay, is this really about, I don't know, popcorn on the shelf, or is this about like something else, So I have to ask myself, like, really what's going on? But little things like that start to happen, and I become just a little bit more frustrated than normal.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing for me too is that I start, especially when I'm thinking about the things that I need to do, I just kind of start, like, I don't know how to organize it in my head. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I just feel very
that happens to me too.
Yeah, I just feel really disorganized in my thinking, and I kind of get into this panic mode. Like, I can't sort my thoughts. Like, I need a little bit of time to just take a breather. So I know that for me is also kind of a sign. And yes, being irritable. My husband can attest to that.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. And I remember when I was being close to kind of the point of burnout, I realized that I was, it's not the kind of the physical tiredness or fatigue that I was, that was difficult to tolerate, but it was the mental fatigue, kind of lack of motivation, and just really feel like, why am I here, or feeling irritated or resentful. And that really tells me that I'm not in a good situation, a good mental state, and I need to give myself a break.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good idea to also, I guess, kind of like what Erica was saying about planning your rewards too. Maybe being conscious about, around this time or this week, I have this major project due. And more than likely around that time, I'm going to be pretty burned out. So let me plan for that weekend to have a trip with my girlfriends, or, go visit my family or something. Kind of plan accordingly, knowing ahead of time that I'm going to need a break.
Right. Yeah. And I know we don't have a lot of, we only have a few minutes, but I know that was supposed to be my last question, but I just had another question. I wonder if it might be interesting. So I don't know if you all have family or have kids, or what's your life situation. And I think that is a really unique consideration for women in graduate school and in a career like ours, when you're thinking about starting a family, and especially having children. I don't have any children, and but I do have a partner. So I recognize life planning, time management is more important now. I'm in a relationship comparing to when I'm single, and the idea of having children potentially in the future just freaks me out, because I was like, okay, how is that going to work? So I was wondering if you have personal experiences, how do you manage time when you have kids, or if you don't have kids? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so I don't have kids yet, but I am married, and I know that it can be very tempting to just spend all your time working. But for the health of your relationship, you can definitely have to set aside that time. But I think that's one reason why it's really important to share your goals and your timeline with your partner. That way, you can let them know, hey, I have this really big project going on right now, so it's not that I don't want to spend time with you, but just I just want to let you know where I'm at. But hey, let's plan a trip for this time, because around that time I should be done with this part, so we can kind of, try to spend some extra time together. But I mean, it's important to, just like we talked about, setting aside time for self-care, spending time with your partner, with your family is part of that self-care. So trying to designate that amount of time. And sometimes, we may not think of this, but, if your partner, let's say, can work from home or is also going to school, my husband, his master's, we set up study dates. So, we're still being productive, but we're spending time together. But yeah, just something like that I think is helpful. And for those who have children, I think in the last session we got some tips about kind of working around your children's schedule, especially the sleep schedules. I think, Erica, you were here when we had one person talking about that. But yeah, working around your children's schedules. I know one person talked about how she would either work really, really early in the day or later at night, just to kind of have that routine set, and like, okay, they need to go to sleep at this time. That's going to be our routine. It doesn't always work perfectly, especially with younger children and infants, but just trying to figure out that schedule and see what times work best for you to be productive. And also, communicating with your partner and saying like, hey, if we have children, do you mind taking care of, the kids today for, an extra amount of time so that I can stay and, work overtime or whatever it may be. So kind of working together to try to meet your goals. I do have 2 dogs. I have to make sure to dedicate enough time to them because they're very needy. And I feel guilty if I leave them home for too long. They're 2 little weenie dogs, and they're very, very needy. So I'm not comparing to having kids. I know that's a much bigger job, but I almost feel like they're my kids, like I need to spend time with them and take them on a walk and whatnot. So yeah. Planning for that time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
That was really great. And Erica and Camille, do you have any last comments or?
This was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Camille, and thank you, Erica, for sharing your experiences and tips and comments too.
No problem. This is great.
Yeah. We'll have to figure out a way to stay in touch. We should make some like Division 45 grad student community or something.
Yeah. I think we do have a Facebook page that's Division 45 graduate Division 45 student membership. And when I sent out the email reminder for our sessions today, so you can see the mentors email on the email that I sent out. So and yeah, I think there is a lot of ways to keep in contact with each other. And if you would like to reach out to each other, or if you don't know how, feel free to just email me or anybody on our student committee. They will be happy to kind of sustain those connections and keep building those bonds. And hopefully we'll have opportunities to meet in person, either at APA or the National Multicultural Summit. Whenever we have those conference times, it's kind of easier for us to meet with each other in person.
Yeah, definitely. That would be awesome.
Thank you, Camille, for sharing the Facebook link.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we're about time, and I just wanted to thank all of you again for Chantal for being here to sharing all of the experiences, and also for Erica, Camille, and the other students who joined us today and share your own experiences.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, hope we can keep in touch and have a good weekend.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye bye.